What can go wrong with a racing game? Well, that's what I find myself asking pretty much every week. Limited tracks, bare bones tuning, terrible AI, clunky handling, outdated graphics. Well, there's a lot of answers here, and today we're going to be looking at one of those games that has pretty much all those things wrong with it. Welcome to the Worst Racing Games, the internet series where you guys suggest different racing games that you think are terrible, then I play them, review them, and rank them. Last week we played one of the worst games I've ever played in my life, London Cab Challenge on the PS2, and this week the Worst Racing Games wheel has blessed us with Road to Fame, a PC exclusive release from 2005. It's one of those mid-2000s European racing titles that tried to ride the street racing boom, but it showed up to the party several years too late. So let's take a trip back to 2005 and find out whether this forgotten racer deserves some redemption or just permanent exile from your mind. So before we dive into this game, we need context. 2005 wasn't really an easy time to release a street racing game. We were coming off the high of Need for Speed Underground and its bigger, flashier sequel, Underground 2, neon lights, open cities, licensed cars, deep tuning systems. You know the drill. And then you also had Midnight Club with its insane speed and arcade chaos, and then you'd also have Need for Speed Most Wanted, which pretty much redefined arcade racing again with cops, cinematic presentation, and a massive career mode. So if you were releasing a small budget racer in 2005, especially a street racer, you had two choices really: compete on polish and features, or do something completely different. And Road to Fame tries kind of to do both, and doesn't really quite manage either. So the hook here is actually kind of interesting. Instead of licensed cars or tuner legends, Road to Fame gives you Eastern European compact cars. Well, just a few. We're talking about vehicles inspired by things like the Trabant, iconic socialist era machines that are about as far from a Nissan Skyline as you can possibly get. Don't get me wrong, there's also some other cars that are obviously based on real life ones, such as the Peugeot 206 and the Beetle. Now in theory that's pretty cool, it's rare to see those kind of socialist cars represented in games. There's a certain novelty in racing glorified plastic boxes on wheels around urban tracks. It's different, it could have been charming, but that novelty only carries you so far, and like I say, that's only a couple of the cars in the game. Road to Fame doesn't do enough to capitalise on that uniqueness. Now before we go any further, if you're a fan of racing games, or in this case terrible racing games, if you haven't done so already then please consider hitting that subscribe button. And if you're enjoying the video, please consider hitting that like button as well, it helps a lot more than you would think. Anyway, let's talk about the campaign, I guess you could call it. The main mode is a linear career progression made up of loosely connected race events. There's no open world, no rival system, no dramatic storyline, no real sense of momentum. You just move from race to race, earning money, buying upgrades or new cars, and repeating the process. The structure feels a lot less like a Road to Fame and more like a checklist. There's very little narrative motivation, events are strung together without much flair. When you first boot the game up, you have a variety of cool and funky looking characters that are definitely very 2000s to choose from. They have very interesting names ranging from Jack Fat to Jack Black. Yes, Jack Black. But the problem is, these characters are also your rivals in the game and they don't really have any personalities outside of their pictures. No escalating drama, no stakes beyond just win the race. Compared to what other racing games were doing in 2005, this already feels dated. It honestly feels like something designed several years before, and it was just shelved for a few years before finally being released. So let's talk about the cars, because this is where the game at least tries to stand out a little bit. You start with humble, underpowered Eastern Bloc style compact vehicles. They're boxy, they're slow, and they look like they'd struggle merging onto a motorway. And that's kind of the joke. The game leans into their cheap, almost comically basic nature. You're not driving some Italian exotic hypercar, you're racing budget commuter cars that look like they are assembled with leftover fridge parts. There is a tuning system where you can upgrade engines, you can adjust the visuals and repaint the body, but here's the problem. The tuning feels very shallow. You literally have about 5 different options of engine tuning to choose from, and you can't really adjust any of it yourself. You just buy it and the car suddenly goes a little bit faster. There's no deep mechanical simulation, no meaningful performance transformation. Most upgrades just feel incremental rather than transformative. In games like Underground 2, upgrading your car felt dramatic, like you were building something unique to you. Here it just feels like you're bolting on slightly shinier rubbish. Now we get to the big one. How does it actually drive? Well, not great. The handling sits in that uncomfortable middle ground between arcade and simulation, without fully committing to either. Cars feel floaty at times, but also strangely stiff. Turning doesn't feel sharp or responsive, drifting doesn't really work, and the grip levels feel inconsistent. For example, on some of the Eastern Bloc style cars, they all handled pretty well. The minute I bought the not Peugeot 206, I started spinning out like a Top Gear skid.
Maniac!
And when racing games get handling wrong, everything else kinda suffers. You can forgive mediocre graphics and a thin story, but if it doesn't feel good to drive, there's kind of a problem. The physics lack weight, collisions feel awkward, and sometimes the car reacts in ways that feels disconnected from player input. It's not completely broken, but it's never satisfying. Like the controls, for example. The controls are as simple as they come. You use the arrow keys to move, left shift is your handbrake turn, and the spacebar is your brake. You can remap those for those of you who prefer playing with the WASD keys, like myself, but that's about it. Obviously this is an early days PC game, there isn't really any controller support. Or of course, wheel support for that matter. The AI behaviour is another problem with this game. It ranges from boring to frustrating. In each race you'll usually have one guy that suddenly becomes god and drives off incredibly fast, you'll have a couple that drive okay, and you'll have one that's just a complete idiot that usually flips the car around every corner.
I am stupid. I am stupid.
The problem with the higher difficulty AI is that it cheats. It literally just cuts corners and goes on the grass, and it isn't affected by going over the curb or being on the grass at all. It maintains that same speed. I mean, hey, after a while I decided if you can't beat them, join them, but you shouldn't have to do that because the AI shouldn't be cheating around corners in the first place. And also, it's just classic early racing game AI that just doesn't have any acknowledgement of where you are, so if you happen to be driving in front of it on the racing line at a slower speed than it is, it won't go around you, it will just ram you from behind, where you either get a speed boost or you'll spin out and crash. You can drive a near perfect race and still watch an opponent magically keep pace ahead of you, or even worse, surge ahead at the last second in a way that feels scripted rather than earned. Difficulty spikes make progression oddly punishing, especially early on. Instead of gradually building skill and confidence, the game just throws you into races where the starting conditions feel stacked against you. After a couple of hours, this becomes less challenging and more irritating, and that's even if you can stomach playing this for a couple of hours. By 2005 standards, the visuals were already behind. The textures are muddy, environments lack detail, the car models are hilariously simplistic, lighting is flat. This isn't early 2000s charming low poly aesthetic, this is the we're several years late to the party visuals. When stacked against contemporary racers, it feels outdated. Same with the menus, they're functional but very uninspired, the UI design lacks personality, it's just serviceable. It's never impressive or exciting, or anything, really. The game also includes some comic book style cutscenes that are meant to inject humour and personality into the experience. In theory, that's a pretty fun idea. In execution, they fall flat. The humour doesn't really land particularly well, and just kinda comes across as cringe, and instead of charming, they come off as low budget and tonally inconsistent. Rather than elevating the experience, they just add to the fact that this feels super budget and cheap. In terms of sound design, there's really nothing I can say about this game in its favour. The engine sounds lack any punch, the music is forgettable, ambient audio is minimal. There's nothing offensively bad here, it's just nothing memorable. And for a racing game, that's kind of disappointing. Sound is a huge part of immersion. The roar of an engine, the screech of tyres, the pulse of background music, these things actually matter. But here, everything feels muted. And by default, the sounds are so incredibly low anyway, you can't really hear anything. Now, to be fair, the concept of racing some of these obscure cars is genuinely unique. There's a certain charm in seeing these machines customized with bright paint jobs and exaggerated upgrades. It's something different from the usual Ferrari and Lamborghini formula. And if you're someone who enjoys niche racing history, there is novelty here. But novelty alone can't carry a full game. Now, in terms of critical response, it was kinda hard to find any reviews for this game because this was a niche 2005 PC exclusive. However, there were a couple of German PC gaming outlets that did cover it and put it in the roughly 50% kind of area, which seems fair. So now the time has come to rank Road to Fame on our worst racing games tier list. This definitely isn't the worst racing game that I've ever played. It's definitely not the best, but they did what they could with probably what was a very low budget and a limited release. So for me, this game is going to sit in the hot garbage tier alongside classics such as London Taxi Rush Hour and Rascal Racers. There are parts of this game that at least function, but there's nothing really redeeming or fun, except watching the AI be a bit garbage. At the end of the day, Road to Fame isn't a broken disaster. It runs, it functions, you can complete it. Yeah, sure, it will probably crash a lot on modern hardware because this was from 2005, but it runs. It feels like a relic from an earlier era that just arrived too late. By 2005 standards, it was already outdated, and its one truly unique idea, focusing on those compact cars, wasn't supported by strong enough gameplay or enough car variety to make it memorable. In another timeline, maybe with more development time, this could have been a quirky cult classic. Instead, it's just nothing, really, other than maybe a curious artifact of the mid-2000s PC racing boom. And so that brings us to the end of our look at Road to Fame, and with it, this week's episode of Worst Racing Games. So let me know in the comments down below. Have you played Road to Fame? Are you gonna play it? And would you rank it any differently? Share all your thoughts below, and as always, if you have any suggestions that you want to see in this series, pop that in the comments as well. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to leave a like, and if you haven't done so already, please consider hitting that subscribe button. A massive shout out to my Patreon subscribers for the continued support, and all I really have left to say is thanks, and goodbye.